The grand hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than most cities. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds filled the space, their voices mixing into a constant hum of conversation. Some had wings, others had scales, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special suits. They gathered here once every cycle to discuss trade, resolve conflicts, and share knowledge. Ambassador Threx walked slowly toward the speaking platform at the center of the hall. His 4 arms carried ancient data tablets that his people had discovered just weeks ago. The Velkari were known throughout the galaxy as historians and archaeologists. They spent their long lives studying the ruins of civilizations that had come before. Threx himself had dedicated 300 years to understanding the predecessors, a mysterious race that had vanished millions of years ago. The predecessors had built incredible things. Their technology was so advanced that even now, with all the knowledge of the galaxy combined, no one could fully understand how their machines worked. They had traveled to distant galaxies, created artificial worlds, and possessed knowledge that seemed almost magical. But one day, they simply disappeared. No bodies, no final messages, nothing. Just empty cities and abandoned technology. Threx reached the platform and activated the holographic display. The chatter in the hall slowly died down as beings turned their attention to him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Honored members of the Council, I come before you with a discovery of great importance. 3 months ago, my team uncovered a sealed vault on Predecessor World 7. Inside, we found something we had never seen before. A warning." The hologram flickered to life, showing lines of text in the predecessor language. Below it, a translation appeared in the common galactic script that all council members could read. "We have seen the future through means you cannot understand," Threx read aloud. "We leave this warning for those who will come after us. In a distant arm of the galaxy, on a world of blue waters and green lands, a species will arise. They call themselves humans. They are not the strongest. They are not the smartest. They are not the fastest. But they possess something far more dangerous." Threx paused, letting the words sink in. Several council members leaned forward with interest. Others looked skeptical. "Humans feel deeply," he continued reading. "They love with intensity that borders on madness. They grieve losses for generations. They remember every kindness and every cruelty. When pushed, they do not break. They bend, they adapt, they overcome. What would destroy other species only makes them stronger. They will fall 1,000 times and stand up 1,001 times." Commander Zroth of the Zephon Empire let out a harsh laugh. He was a massive being, covered in thick armor-like skin, with teeth designed for tearing flesh. The Zephon were warriors, conquerors who had claimed dozens of worlds through military might. "Ridiculous," Zroth said loudly. "The predecessors were wise, but this sounds like superstition. One species cannot threaten the entire galaxy. We have faced countless species across thousands of worlds. None have been unstoppable." Several other council members nodded in agreement. The Cortani delegate, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish made of light, spoke up. "Perhaps this is not meant to be taken literally. The predecessors often spoke in metaphors and riddles." Threx shook his head firmly. "There is more. Please, let me finish." He returned his attention to the hologram. "Humans will leave their world and spread to the stars. This is certain. When that day comes, you will have a choice. Welcome them with open hands and gain allies who will stand by you until the end of time. They will fight your enemies as if they were their own. They will share their resources without counting the cost. They will defend your people like family. Or," Threx's voice dropped lower, "treat them as enemies. Threaten their homes, harm their loved ones, and you will face something terrible. For humans, when defending what they love, do not understand surrender. They do not calculate odds. They do not consider the reasonable choice. They simply fight until they win, or until nothing remains. The hall fell silent. Even Zroth had stopped laughing. Threx highlighted the final lines of the prophecy. We have seen timelines where humanity joined the galactic community in peace. We have seen timelines where they were provoked into war. In the peaceful timelines, the galaxy flourished beyond imagination. In the war timelines, the sky turned black with their ships, and silence fell across 1,000 worlds. He looked out at the assembled council. The prophecy ends with this warning: beware the day when humanity decides to stop holding back, for they are born with violence in their hearts and love in their souls, and you will never know which one you will face until it is too late. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Zroth stood up again, his voice filled with contempt. I have heard enough of this fortune-telling nonsense. The Zephon Empire has conquered warrior races that would make these humans weep in fear. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have fleets that block out stars. No single species could challenge our might, let alone the combined strength of this council. The Cortani delegate agreed. Commander Zroth is correct. While we respect the predecessors, we cannot make policy based on ancient warnings about a species we have never met. For all we know, these humans might not even exist. Or they may have destroyed themselves before achieving space travel, as so many aggressive species do. The Minari observer, a small being with large eyes and silver skin, spoke carefully. Perhaps we should at least record the location of this Earth world. If humans do achieve space travel, we could monitor them, study them from a distance. A waste of resources, Zroth declared. We have real threats to deal with. Pirates in the outer sectors, trade disputes, border conflicts. I will not waste my empire's time chasing ghosts from a dead civilization's fever dreams. One by one, the council members voted to simply file the warning in the historical archives. It would be recorded, preserved, but not acted upon. Threx watched with growing sadness as his people's discovery was dismissed as ancient superstition. As the council moved on to other matters, Threx gathered his data tablets. He had done his duty. He had delivered the warning. If the galaxy chose to ignore it, that was beyond his control. 300 years had passed since Ambassador Threx presented the ancient warning to the Galactic Council. The prophecy had been filed away in the archives, forgotten by most, and dismissed by all. The galaxy continued its usual patterns of trade, diplomacy, and occasional conflict. Life went on as it always had. Captain Vorn commanded the Zephon scout ship Blade of Victory as it patrolled the outer regions of explored space. His mission was simple and boring. Map new star systems, catalog any resources, and report back. In 40 years of service, he had never found anything interesting. Just empty rocks, gas clouds, and the occasional asteroid field worth mining. But today was different. Captain, I am detecting unusual electromagnetic signals, his sensor operator called out. The young Zephon's voice carried a hint of excitement. They are coming from the third planet in the system ahead. The signatures match early industrial technology. Vorn felt his blood quicken. A developing civilization was a rare find. Depending on their level of advancement, this could be very profitable. The Zephon Empire had strict protocols for first contact situations. If a species was primitive enough, they could be conquered and absorbed. If they were too advanced, diplomatic contact was required. Take us into the system. Stealth approach. I want full scans before they detect us. The ship slid silently through space, its advanced technology making it invisible to primitive sensors. As they drew closer, Vorn studied the readings with growing interest. The planet was perfect for life. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in complex patterns. Billions of life signs scattered across the surface. Captain, these beings have split the atom, the sensor operator said, surprise clear in his voice. They have primitive computers, satellites in orbit, and chemical rockets. But something is odd. Their technology seems uneven. Very advanced in some areas. surprisingly primitive in others. Vorn pulled up images of the planet's surface. Cities sprawled across continents, connected by roads and airways. Lights blazed across the dark side of the planet. Ships moved across oceans, but he also saw forests, farms, and vast wilderness areas. These beings had developed technology, but had not yet consumed their entire world. "What do they call themselves?" Vorn asked. The communication officer worked for several minutes, analyzing broadcasts. "They call themselves humans, Captain. The planet is named Earth." Something about that name tickled Vorn's memory, but he could not place it. He dismissed the feeling. After all, the galaxy was vast. Many names sounded similar. "They are divided into hundreds of nations," the officer continued. "But they all seem to be the same species, just different governments and cultures. Their broadcasts show constant conflict, wars, disputes, competition." Vorn smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. A divided species would be easy to conquer. They would probably surrender quickly when faced with superior technology. He could already imagine the glory this would bring him. The rewards from the Empire. Perhaps even a promotion. Send a message to command. "I am claiming this system for the Zephon Empire. Request, invasion fleet." The response came within days. Commander Zroth himself would lead the invasion. 200 warships would arrive within 1 month. It was overkill for such a primitive world, but the Empire liked to make statements. Any species watching would see that resistance was futile. Vorn kept his ship in orbit, hidden, watching and learning about the humans. He studied their military forces, their weapons, their defenses. Everything confirmed his initial assessment. They had nuclear weapons, yes, but primitive delivery systems. Their space program had barely reached their own moon. They had no shields, no energy weapons, no faster-than-light travel. This would be over quickly. The invasion fleet arrived in Earth's sky like a thunderstorm. 200 massive warships materialized in orbit, their presence immediately detected by every sensor on the planet. Vorn watched the human response with amusement. Panic spread across their communication networks. Their military forces scrambled. Their leaders demanded explanations. Commander Zroth's broadcast went out to every communication device on Earth. His message was simple and had been used 1,000 times before on 1,000 other worlds. "People of Earth, I am Commander Zroth of the Zephon Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender immediately, and your lives will be spared. You will be absorbed into the Empire. Your resources will serve our needs, and your people will be given work. Resist, and we will reduce your cities to ash. You have 1 planetary rotation to decide." Vorn expected immediate surrender. Instead, something unexpected happened. The humans refused. Their leaders gave speeches about freedom, about defending their home, about never surrendering to tyrants. Their military forces, laughably primitive compared to Zephon technology, prepared for battle. Their civilians began evacuating cities and preparing shelters. It was madness. It was suicide. Commander Zroth laughed at their defiance and gave the order to begin the invasion. The first wave of Zephon troops landed in a dozen major cities. They expected to overwhelm the local defenses quickly. Instead, they found enemies who refused to break. Human soldiers fought with primitive firearms and explosives, but they fought smart. They used their knowledge of the terrain. They set traps. They refused to face the Zephon in open combat, where they would be destroyed. In the ruins of a city called Tokyo, a human commander named Jake Patterson coordinated the defense from a bunker deep underground. He had been a career military man before the invasion, but nothing had prepared him for this. Fighting aliens with superior technology seemed impossible. But Jake had learned something important in his years of service. You did not need to be stronger than your enemy. You just needed to make victory cost more than they were willing to pay. They have better weapons, better armor, better ships, Jake told his officers during a planning session. But they do not know our world. Every street, every building, every tunnel. This is our home. We use that. The human resistance adapted quickly. When Zephon forces used their atmospheric flyers, humans fired missiles from hidden positions and disappeared into subway tunnels before retaliation could come. When Zephon troops tried to occupy cities, human civilians fed false information and sabotaged supply lines. When Zephon deployed their massive war machines, humans targeted their weak points with improvised explosives. Captain Amy Rodriguez led a squadron of human fighter jets in an attack that should have been impossible. Her planes were so primitive that Zephon sensors barely registered them as threats. She used that to her advantage, flying low under their shields and targeting the hangar bay of a Zephon carrier. Her squadron fired everything they had, and then Amy did something that shocked every being watching. She flew her plane directly into the carrier's reactor. The massive ship exploded, killing thousands of Zephon troops and destroying dozens of support craft. Amy died instantly, but her sacrifice gave human forces time to evacuate 2 million civilians from the region. Vorn watched from orbit as the invasion that should have taken days dragged into weeks, then months. The humans were losing. Their casualties were terrible. Their cities were being destroyed, but they simply would not stop fighting. Every victory the Zephon claimed came at a higher cost than expected. Commander Zroth grew frustrated and angry. He increased the bombardments, sending a message that resistance was futile. But the humans just dug deeper, fought harder, and found new ways to hurt their enemies. They sabotaged the atmospheric processors the Zephon deployed. They launched guerrilla raw news of the Earth invasion spread slowly through the galaxy. Most species paid little attention at first. The Zephon Empire conquered primitive worlds regularly. It was nothing new. But as weeks turned into months, and the conquest that should have been swift dragged on, more beings began to take notice. The Galactic Council received reports from Zephon observers, and the tone shifted from confident to frustrated to concerned. A primitive species with no shields, no energy weapons, and no space fleet was somehow holding off one of the galaxy's major military powers. It should have been impossible. Ambassador Threx, now ancient even by Velkari standards, sat in his archive chamber and reviewed the reports. His heart felt heavy with sadness. He had tried to warn them 300 years ago. He had stood before the council and shared the predecessor prophecy. They had laughed. They had dismissed it as superstition. Now humans were proving the prophecy true, and the cost was terrible. Millions of humans had died. Their world was being torn apart, and the Zephon were learning a hard lesson about what happens when you threaten a species that refuses to accept defeat. Threx accessed the old prophecy files and read the words again. They will fall 1,000 times and stand up 1,001 times. He closed his eyes. The predecessors had known. They had seen this moment across the vast distance of time and tried to prevent it. On Earth, Lieutenant Ben Harper sat in a Zephon prison cell. He had been captured 3 months ago during a failed raid on a supply depot. The Zephon did not torture their prisoners. They simply held them in cells with basic food and water, considering them too primitive to bother with detailed interrogation. That was their mistake. Ben was an engineer by training. Before the war, he had designed advanced computer systems. Now, he spent every waking hour studying his cell, the guards, and any piece of Zephon technology he could observe. The walls were made of some kind of advanced alloy. The door used an energy field instead of physical locks. The guards carried weapons that fired concentrated plasma bolts, but it was the transport ships that interested Ben the most. He could see them through his small cell window, landing and taking off regularly. They moved without visible propulsion. They arrived and departed in flashes of distorted space. That meant faster than light travel. The holy grail of human science was sitting right in front of him. Ben was not alone in his observations. Throughout the Zephon-occupied zones, captured human scientists and engineers were studying everything they could. They shared information through secret messages, coded conversations, and memory when they were eventually freed in prisoner exchanges. One night, Ben noticed something unusual. A young Velkari was observing the prison camp from a nearby hill. The four-armed alien had been watching for weeks, never interfering but always present. Ben did not know what to make of it until the Velkari approached the fence one evening. "Human engineer," the Velkari called softly. "I am Kelth. I have been watching your people fight. You should not be able to fight as you do. Yet you continue." Ben approached the fence carefully. "We protect our home. What else can we do? Surrender. Accept peace. Live under Zephon rule." Kelth's voice was sad. "Many species have done so. They live content lives. We would rather die free than live as slaves." Kelth was silent for a long moment. Then, he reached into his robes and pulled out a small data device. "My mentor, Ambassador Threx, warned the galaxy about your kind. 300 years ago, he told them what would happen if humans were provoked. They laughed. They dismissed his warning." "What did he say?" Ben asked. "That you would fight until you won or until nothing remained. That you do not understand surrender when defending what you love." Kelth held up the data device. "I have been studying Zephon technology. I have information about their faster-than-light drives. If your people could understand it, perhaps you could level this war." Ben felt his heart race. "Why would you help us?" "Because the prophecy my people discovered said humanity could be either the galaxy's greatest ally or its worst nightmare. The Zephon made the choice for everyone when they invaded your world. Now I make my choice. I choose to help you, hoping that when this is over, humans will remember kindness." Kelth tossed the data device over the fence. Ben caught it, hardly believing what was happening. Before he could speak again, the Velkari disappeared into the darkness. 3 days later, Ben was freed in a prisoner exchange. He carried the data device hidden in a false tooth, memorized its contents, and passed the information to the human research teams the moment he reached friendly lines. In a bunker complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, human scientists studied Kelth's information with desperate intensity. Dr. Helen Price, a physicist who had been working on theoretical faster-than-light models before the war, could hardly believe what she was seeing. "It is real," she whispered, staring at the equations. "The mathematics work. The Zephon use a form of space compression we theorized but thought impossible." "Can we build it?" Jake Patterson asked. He had traveled to the research facility personally to understand what they had. "Build it? Maybe, eventually. The engineering challenges are immense." Helen pulled up simulations on a holographic display. "But there is a shortcut. If we could capture an intact Zephon drive, study the actual hardware, we could reverse engineer it much faster." Jake nodded slowly. "How long?" 6 months. Maybe less if we had the real thing to work from." "Then we get you the real thing." The operation took weeks of planning. Human forces needed to capture a Zephon ship intact, which meant finding one damaged enough to be vulnerable, but functional enough to still have working systems. They also needed to hold the position long enough for recovery teams to extract the technology. Captain Danny Webb led the strike team. He had been a test pilot before the war, known for his ability to handle any aircraft in any condition. Now, he commanded a mixed unit of pilots, Marines, and engineers. Their target was a Zephon frigate that had been damaged in an engagement and was attempting repairs in a remote region. The attack came at dawn. Human forces hit the Zephon position with everything they had, forcing the aliens to focus on defense rather than destroying their own ship. In the chaos, Danny's team stormed the frigate, fighting room by room until they reached the engine compartment. The human engineers worked with desperate speed, cutting free the entire drive assembly, while Marines held off Zephon reinforcements. They loaded the massive device onto transport trucks and fled, knowing they had minutes before orbital strikes would level the entire area. 12 humans died buying time for the convoy to escape. But they succeeded. The intact faster-than-light drive reached the research facility, and Dr. Helen Price went to work. She did not sleep for 3 days. Her team disassembled the drive piece by piece, scanning, measuring, and analyzing every component. They had samples of advanced materials that should not exist, circuits that operated on principles human science had barely theorized, power systems that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. But slowly, through exhaustion and determination, they began to understand. It is like finding a computer from 1,000 years in your future, Helen explained to Jake. We do not fully understand how it works, but we can see what it does and copy it. We can build a human version, using our own materials and methods. How long? Jake asked again. 4 months to build a prototype. If it works, another 2 months to build enough drives for a fleet. Jake looked at the scientists, the engineers, and all the exhausted humans working around the clock. You have unlimited resources. Every factory, every material, every expert we have. Build it. The human war effort shifted, while forces on the ground continued fighting. By 6 months after Ben Harper smuggled the data device out of the Zephon prison camp, humanity tested its first faster-than-light drive. The prototype ship was crude, built from salvaged materials and human ingenuity. It looked nothing like the elegant Zephon vessels. Where alien ships were smooth and graceful, the human ship was angular and brutal, covered in armor plates and weapon mounts. Dr. Helen Price watched from the control center as the ship, named Defiance, powered up its drive. She had not slept properly in months. None of them had. But they had done it. They had taken technology from a civilization thousands of years more advanced and made it work. All systems green, the pilot reported. Captain Kyle Morrison was a veteran of the Orbital Defense Forces, one of the few pilots who had survived multiple engagements with Zephon fighters. Ready. For jump on your order. Take us to the test coordinates, Helen ordered. Jump in. 3, 2, 1. Space twisted. Reality folded. And the Defiance vanished from Earth orbit, reappearing instantly 1,000,000 kilometers away. The control room erupted in cheers. Humans could now travel faster than light. The war had changed. But one ship was not enough. Jake Patterson, now promoted to general and commander of all human military forces, stood before the remnants of Earth's governments with a simple message. We have proven we can hurt them. Now we prove we can beat them. Every factory, every resource, every person must contribute. We build a fleet. We take this war to their homeworld, and we make sure no one ever threatens Earth again. The response was overwhelming. Humanity, united by the invasion, threw everything into the war effort. Shipyards appeared in orbit around Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, even on the larger asteroids. Humans worked in shifts around the clock. Children collected scrap metal for recycling. Elderly citizens who could not fight assembled components. Scientists who had spent their lives in competition now collaborated freely. The first combat ship was ready within a month. Then 10 more. Then 50. The humans did not build beautiful ships. They built effective ones. Each vessel was designed for one purpose: to fight and win against superior numbers. They also learned from every Zephon tactic they had faced. Human ships had redundant systems, armored hulls, and weapons designed to exploit every weakness the Zephon had revealed. Where Zephon relied on shields, humans used thick armor. Where Zephon used energy weapons, humans used both energy and kinetic weapons. Where Zephon ships were fast, human ships were tough. Commander Zroth finally began to realize something was wrong when human attacks increased in sophistication. The primitives who had fought with chemical rockets now deployed weapons that matched Zephon technology. Their defenses improved. Their tactics evolved. It was as if they were learning and adapting faster than should be possible. Then came the day that changed everything. A human warship appeared in Zephon space without warning. The Defiance, now upgraded and armed for war, dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a Zephon colony world. Captain Kyle Morrison broadcast a simple message that reached every Zephon communication network. You invaded our home. Now we know where you live. Before Zephon forces could respond, the Defiance engaged a patrol group of 6 ships. The battle should have been impossible. 1 human ship against 6 Zephon warships, but Kyle Morrison had learned from months of desperate fighting. He did not fight fair. He used every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic, every weakness his people had discovered. The Defiance targeted power systems instead of weapons. It used the gravity well of the planet to slingshot around incoming fire. It deployed mines in the path of pursuing ships, and when a Zephon cruiser tried to ram him, Kyle jumped away, leaving the cruiser to crash into 2 of its own vessels. When the engagement ended, 3 Zephon ships were destroyed, and the others were fleeing. The Defiance had taken damage, but was still functional. Kyle jumped away before reinforcements arrived, but he had made his point. Humans could fight in space. Humans could win in space. And most terrifying of all, humans now knew where Zephon worlds were located. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Ambassador Threx attended, his ancient body barely able to make the journey. He listened as reports came in of human raids across Zephon space. 1 ship had become 3, then 10, then 50. Human forces were hitting military installations, supply depots, and isolated outposts. They are learning our tactics. A Zephon military commander reported, his voice tight with anger. Every engagement teaches them more. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Perhaps negotiations should be considered, the Cortani delegate suggested. Before this escalates further. Negotiations? Commander Zroth appeared in the council chamber, having come directly from the warfront. With primitives who attacked our sovereign territory? Never. We will crush them completely. Threx spoke up, his voice weak but clear. You already tried that. You invaded their world with 200 ships. They should have surrendered in days. Instead, they fought for months and learned your technology. Now, they have faster-than-light travel. Now they are bringing the war to you. When will you understand? This is the prophecy coming true. Ancient superstition. Zroth spat. We need more ships. More troops. I request permission to escalate the campaign. The council debated for hours. In the end, they gave Zroth what he wanted. The Zephon Empire would commit more resources to ending the human threat. They would blockade Earth completely. They would hunt down every human ship in space. They would win through overwhelming force. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years after the invasion began, Admiral Lisa Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Retribution, humanity's first purpose-built flagship. Around her, the largest human fleet ever assembled, prepared for their most ambitious operation. 3,000 warships, built in the orbital shipyards, armed with the best weapons human science could create, crewed by men and women who had lost everything to the Zephon invasion. Lisa had been a commercial pilot before the war. She had flown cargo ships between continents, living a peaceful life. Then, the Zephon came. They destroyed her city, killed her family, took everything she loved. She had joined the resistance the next day and risen through the ranks through skill, determination, and a tactical mind that understood how to hurt enemies who thought they were invincible. Now she would show the Zephon what humanity had learned from 5 years of war. All ships report ready, her tactical officer announced. Coordinates locked on Zephon Prime. Navigation confirmed. Weapons armed and ready. Came from weapons control. Lisa took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine humanity's future. Win, and Earth would be safe. Lose, and humanity might be exterminated. All ships, she spoke into the fleet-wide channel. You know what they did to our world. You know what we have lost. Today, we show them that humanity will never be conquered. Today, we take the fight to their home. Today, we win. 3,000 human voices responded with a roar of approval. Jump, Lisa ordered. Space folded. Reality twisted. And 3,000 human warships appeared in orbit around Zephon Prime simultaneously. The sky above the Zephon homeworld turned black with human vessels. Billions of Zephon looked up from their cities and saw doom hanging over them. Their mighty military, spread across dozens of worlds fighting human raiders, was caught completely out of position. Admiral Lisa Chen broadcast her message to the planet below. Her words were not a demand for surrender. They were terms of survival. People of the Zephon Empire. 5 years ago, you invaded our home. Without provocation. You killed millions of our people. You destroyed our cities. You thought we would surrender because we were primitive. You thought we would break because we were weak. You were wrong. She paused, letting her words sink in. We learned from you. We adapted. We built this fleet from the ruins of our world. Every ship you see was built by people who lost everything to your invasion. Every weapon was designed to kill Zephon soldiers. Every system was tested in the battles you forced upon us. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Zephon Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in known space, had been defeated, not destroyed, but humbled. Their homeworld sat under permanent blockade by human ships. Their military forces had been scattered, and most shocking of all, this had been done by a species that 5 years ago did not even have faster-than-light travel. In council chambers across hundreds of worlds, leaders watched recordings of the battle over Zephon Prime with growing fear. The humans had not just won, they had won decisively, with a fleet built in less than 5 years. What could they do with 10 years? 20? 100? Ambassador Threx sat in his archive chamber, feeling vindicated but sad. He had warned them. The predecessors had warned them. But no one had listened until it was too late. Now the galaxy had to deal with the consequences. The Galactic Council sent an official invitation to Earth, requesting a human representative attend a full session. It was phrased politely, but everyone understood what it really meant. The galaxy wanted to know what humanity intended to do next. Commander Eric Stone received the honor of representing humanity. He was a decorated veteran who had fought in the initial invasion, survived captivity, and led ground forces during the counteroffensive. He was also a diplomat by training. Someone who understood that wars could be won or lost at the negotiating table just as easily as on the battlefield. Eric traveled to the Council homeworld aboard the ESS Unity, a mid-sized cruiser that represented the new standard of human ship design. It was not the largest or most powerful ship humanity had built, but it was impressive enough to make a statement. As the Unity approached the Council station, other species' ships gave it a wide berth. The Council chamber had not changed in the 300 years since Threx first presented the prophecy. It was still massive, still filled with representatives from hundreds of species. But now, as Eric Stone walked toward the speaking platform, the usual chatter was absent. Every being in the hall watched the human in silence. Threx stood to greet him formally. The ancient Velkari moved slowly, his forearms trembling slightly with age. Commander Stone, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to the community of spacefaring species. Thank you, Ambassador. Eric replied. He looked out at the assembled beings and saw fear in many faces. Good. Fear would keep them from making the same mistake the Zephon had made. The Cortani delegate, still resembling a floating jellyfish of light, spoke first. Commander Stone, the Council wishes to understand humanity's intentions. Your species has demonstrated considerable military power. We hope that Earth seeks peaceful coexistence with the rest of the galaxy. Eric took his time responding. He had practiced this speech 1,000 times, but the weight of the moment was heavy. What he said here would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations. 300 years ago, Eric began, A Velkari ambassador stood where I stand now. He presented a prophecy from an ancient civilization, warning about humanity. The council dismissed that warning. They laughed at the idea that one species could be dangerous. He paused, letting the reminder sink in. Then, 5 years ago, the Zephon Empire invaded Earth without provocation. They attacked our homes, killed our families, destroyed our cities. They expected us to surrender because we were primitive. They thought we would accept conquest because we were weak. But humans do not surrender when fighting for their homes. We adapt. We learn. We overcome. In 5 years, we went from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. We built a fleet from nothing. We took the war to our enemy's homeworld, and we won. The hall remained silent. Every being understood the implicit threat. If humans could do that in 5 years, what could they do in 50? But, Eric continued, his voice softening slightly, we did not want this war. We did not want to build warships instead of exploration vessels. We did not want our children to grow up learning tactics instead of art. The Zephon invasion forced us to become warriors when we would have preferred to remain explorers. He looked directly at the Zephon representatives in the hall. Commander Zroth was not among them. He had been removed from command after the defeat. We defeated the Zephon Empire not because we wanted conquest, but because we wanted to survive. We maintain fleets in their space not because we want to dominate them, but because we will never again allow anyone to threaten Earth. Eric turned his attention back to the full council. Humanity comes before you today with a simple message. We seek peaceful coexistence with any species willing to offer the same. We will trade, share knowledge, and work together toward common goals. We will respect your territories, your cultures, and your sovereignty. But, his voice grew harder, any species that threatens Earth or our colonies will face the full strength of human military power. We will not attack first. We will not seek conquest, but we will never hesitate to defend what is ours. The days of humanity being prey are over. The Minari observer, the small being with large eyes and silver skin, spoke up. Commander Stone, many species in this chamber fear what humanity might become. You have shown remarkable capacity for warfare. How can we trust that you will not use that power for aggression? It was a fair question. And Eric had expected it. You can trust us because we understand the cost of war. Every human alive has lost someone in the past 5 years. We know what it means to fight for survival. We know the price of violence. We do not want to pay that price again, unless we have no choice. But more importantly, Eric continued, judge us by our actions, not your fears. We defeated the Zephon Empire. We could have destroyed their homeworld. We could have enslaved their people. We could have done to them what they tried to do to us. But we did not. We offered terms of survival, not extermination. That should tell you something about who humanity is. Ambassador Threx spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of his centuries. Commander Stone speaks truth. The prophecy warned that humans, when threatened, would be terrible enemies. But it also said that humans, when welcomed, would be loyal allies. The galaxy made a choice when it ignored the warning. Now, humanity makes a choice. We should be grateful they choose mercy over vengeance. The council debated for hours after Eric's speech. Some species argued for immediate alliance with humanity, seeing them as potential protectors. Others advocated for caution, suggesting that humanity should be monitored but not provoked. A few, mostly Zephon allies, wanted to organize a coalition against the human threat. But in the end, the council reached a consensus. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign power, with full rights and protections under galactic law. Trade agreements would be negotiated, cultural exchanges would be encouraged, and most importantly, Earth's territory would be clearly defined and respected. As Eric prepared to leave the council station, Threx approached him privately. The ancient Velkari looked tired, as if a great burden had finally been lifted. Commander Stone, I must tell you something. 300 years ago, I tried to prevent this war. I shared the prophecy, but no one listened. I have carried the guilt of that failure ever since. Eric shook his head. You did what you could, Ambassador. The failure was not yours. It belonged to those who chose to ignore wisdom. Perhaps. Threx pulled out an ancient data tablet. But I can offer you something now. The prophecy I shared with the Council was only part of what we found. There was more. Information about the predecessors themselves. Why they disappeared. What they discovered. I give this to you now, hoping humanity will use this knowledge more wisely than my generation did. Eric accepted the tablet carefully. Why give this to us? 10 years had passed since the Zephon invasion began. Earth had changed dramatically in that time. The planet's surface still showed scars from the war. Craters, where cities once stood, memorials where millions had died. But humanity had rebuilt with the same determination they had shown in fighting. Cities rose from the ruins, better designed and more beautiful than before. Orbital stations multiplied around Earth, Luna, and Mars. Humanity had not just recovered, they had grown stronger. Captain Nicole Sanders stood on the bridge of the ESS Discovery, one of the newest ships in the human fleet. Unlike the warships that had been built during the conflict, Discovery was designed for exploration. It had weapons, because humanity had learned the hard way that the galaxy could be dangerous, but its primary mission was peaceful. Seek out new worlds, make contact with new species, learn, and explore. Nicole had been a student when the invasion happened. She watched her university burn from orbit during an evacuation. She spent the war years working in the shipyards, assembling the vessels that would eventually defeat the Zephon. When peace came, she applied to the newly formed Exploration Corps and worked her way up to command. Captain, we are approaching the system designated Explorer 7, her navigation officer reported. Sensors show multiple planets in the habitable zone. Signs of industrial development on the third and fourth worlds. Nicole felt the familiar mix of excitement and caution. First contact situations could go many ways. Some species welcomed humans as friends. Others remembered the war with the Zephon and feared what humanity might do. A few tried to test human resolve, only to discover that while humans preferred peace, they had not forgotten how to fight. Standard approach protocol, Nicole ordered. Let them detect us first. We will wait for their response before making contact. The species on Explorer 7 called themselves the Taurine. They were insectoid beings with a hive-like social structure. But unlike Earth insects, each individual maintained independent thought. When they detected Discovery's approach, their response was cautious but curious. They sent a greeting message in the Galactic Common Language. Nicole responded carefully, following the protocols that Earth's diplomatic corps had developed. State your peaceful intentions. Offer trade and knowledge exchange. Make clear that you respect their sovereignty. But also make clear that humans could defend themselves if necessary. The Terran invited a diplomatic team to their world. Nicole selected a small group, including herself, and descended in a shuttle. The Terran cities were beautiful in an alien way. Towers that spiraled upward like natural formations. Buildings that seemed to grow rather than being built. The Terran leader, an elderly being named Chix, greeted them in a grand hall. We have heard stories of humans. The species that went from primitives to warriors in a single generation. The ones who defeated the Zephon Empire. Some say you are conquerors waiting to reveal your true nature. Others say you are defenders who only fight when provoked. Which story is true? Nicole had heard variations of this question on every world she visited. Both stories are true, in a way. We are not conquerors. We do not seek to dominate others, but we will defend ourselves and our allies without hesitation. We learned a hard lesson when the Zephon invaded our world. Peace is preferable, but survival is not negotiable. Chix nodded his complex head. An honest answer. We appreciate that. The Terran have never been warriors. We build, we create, we think, but we are surrounded by species that respect only strength. Perhaps an alliance with humanity would benefit both our peoples. Over the following weeks, negotiations proceeded smoothly. The Terran offered their advanced biotechnology in exchange for human manufacturing techniques. They shared star charts of their region in exchange for Earth's cultural databases. Most importantly, they agreed to mutual defense pact. If anyone threatened the Terran, humanity would respond. If anyone threatened humanity, the Terran would provide support. It was the kind of alliance the ancient prophecy had spoken of. Humans were becoming the galaxy's protectors. Not through conquest, but through choice. On Earth, in the rebuilt city of New Geneva, the human government convened to discuss the growing network of alliances. General Jake Patterson, retired from active military service but still influential in strategic planning, presented his analysis to the Council. We have defensive pacts with 17 species now. Trade agreements with 43. Cultural exchanges with dozens more. Humanity has become a significant galactic power in just 10 years. But we need to be careful about how we use that power. President Maria Gonzalez, elected 5 years ago to lead the unified Earth government, nodded in agreement. The temptation to use our military strength for political gain will always exist. We must resist it. Our principles are what separate us from the Zephon. Agreed, Admiral Lisa Chen added. She had returned from Zephon space the previous year, satisfied that the occupation fleet could be reduced. But we also cannot be naive. There are species watching us, waiting to see if we will become weak again. We need to maintain our strength while using it wisely. Dr. Helen Price, now leading Earth's scientific advancement programs, spoke up. I have been studying the information Ambassador Threx gave us. The predecessor technology. Their knowledge goes far beyond anything the galaxy currently possesses. If we can unlock even a fraction of it, humanity could advance centuries in years. And, which brings us back to the question of how we use power, Jake said. Do we share predecessor knowledge freely? Do we keep it for ourselves? Do we weaponize it or use it for peaceful advancement? The debate continued for hours, as it had for months. The consensus was always the same. Humanity would advance, would grow stronger, would explore and expand. But they would do so with principles. Share knowledge that helped rather than harmed. Use military power only for defense. Respect other species while never accepting threats to Earth. In orbit around Zephon Prime, the human monitoring fleet had been reduced to 12 ships. Commander Zroth, released from military prison, lived as a civilian on his homeworld. He sometimes looked up at the human vessels in the sky and remembered the arrogance that had led to his empire's defeat. He had learned the same lesson his ancestors should have learned from the prophecy. Never underestimate a species fighting for its home. One day, a young Zephon approached him with questions. Commander, you fought the humans. Are the stories true? That they are unbeatable? Zroth considered the question carefully. They are not unbeatable. They can be hurt. They can be killed. But they do not break. That is what makes them dangerous. Most species, when faced with overwhelming force, will calculate the odds and surrender. Humans calculate the odds, see that they are impossible, and fight anyway. So we lost because we underestimated them? We lost because we attacked them. The prophecy warned us. Ambassador Threx warned us. But we thought ourselves superior. We learned the truth too late. Zroth looked at the ships overhead. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Humans make excellent allies and terrible enemies. The wise species choose which one they want to face. Back on Earth, in a small park in New Tokyo, A memorial stood to honor those who died during the invasion. Admiral Amy Rodriguez's name was carved in stone, alongside millions of others. Her sacrifice had bought time for others to escape. Her courage had inspired a generation. A young girl stood before the memorial with her mother. "Did you know her?" the girl asked. "I never met her," the mother replied. "But she saved my life. When she crashed her plane into that carrier, she bought time for the evacuation. I was on one of the transports that escaped because of her." Was she afraid? The mother thought about it. Probably. But she did what needed to be done anyway. That is what humans do. We feel fear, but we do not let it stop us. Across the galaxy, on the Velkari homeworld, Ambassador Threx finally allowed himself to rest. He had lived to see humanity join the galactic community. He had lived to see his warnings vindicated. He had lived to see the prophecy fulfilled, not with the galaxy's destruction, but with humanity choosing the path of guardianship rather than conquest. In his final days, Threx recorded a message for future generations. "I have seen the rise of humanity from primitives to power. I have seen them suffer, adapt, and overcome. They chose to defend rather than attack, to build rather than destroy, to share rather than hoard. The predecessors were right to warn us, but perhaps they were also telling us something else. That in the vastness of space, among countless species, sometimes one emerges that can change everything. Humanity is that species, not because they are the strongest or the smartest, but because they refuse to give up, because they value freedom above safety, because they would rather die fighting than live in chains. Future generations should remember the lesson. Treat humans with respect, and you gain loyal allies. Threaten them, and you face enemies who will never stop. The choice is yours to make." Captain Nicole Sanders and the Discovery continued their mission, exploring the frontier regions where few species ventured. They found new worlds, made new contacts, and expanded humanity's understanding of the galaxy. Sometimes, they faced danger. Sometimes, they had to defend themselves, but mostly, they explored and learned, which had been humanity's dream long before the Zephon invasion forced them to become warriors. One evening, Nicole stood in her ready room looking at the star charts. So many systems to explore, so many species to meet, so much to learn. Earth's sun was a distant point of light from here, but it was still home. Still, the world worth fighting for. Her communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we are receiving a distress signal. A Minari science vessel under attack by pirates in the next system." Nicole did not hesitate. "Set course. Maximum speed. Ready weapons." Discovery jumped into action, the crew moving with practiced efficiency. They would help the Minari because that was what humans did. They defended those who needed defending. They stood against those who threatened the innocent, not because they sought glory or reward, but because it was right. The pirate ships fled when Discovery arrived, knowing that fighting humans was rarely profitable. The Minari vessel was saved, its crew grateful for the rescue. Another species learned that humans could be counted on. Another alliance was strengthened. Another step toward the peaceful galaxy humanity hoped to build. As Discovery resumed its exploration mission, Nicole thought about the ancient prophecy that had warned the galaxy about humanity. The predecessors had seen the future and tried to prevent conflict. They had failed in that goal. But perhaps they had succeeded in something else. They had planted the seed of understanding that would eventually allow humanity and the galaxy to coexist. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not through prophecy or destiny, but through sacrifice, determination, and an unwillingness to accept defeat. They had proven themselves in fire and blood. They had earned respect through strength and maintained it through principle. The sky had turned black with human ships, just as the prophecy warned. But instead of bringing darkness to the galaxy, those ships brought hope. They carried explorers, diplomats, scientists, and when necessary, warriors who would defend the innocent. The galaxy had laughed at the warning about one species. They would never laugh at humanity again. But more importantly, they would never need to fear humanity either, because humans had learned the most important lesson of all. Strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. Wisdom without strength leads to victimhood. But strength and wisdom together could change the galaxy for the better. And that was exactly what humanity intended to do. Because the prophecy said humanity would either be the galaxy's greatest hope or its worst nightmare. The Zephon made the choice that led to nightmare. I make a choice now that might lead to hope. Use their knowledge well, Commander Stone. The galaxy needs guardians, not conquerors. Eric returned to Earth with the Council's recognition and Threx's gift. He reported to the unified government that had formed during the war years, explaining everything that had happened. Admiral Lisa Chen listened to his report from the bridge of the Retribution, still in orbit around Zephon Prime. She had requested to remain with the occupation fleet, ensuring the Zephon kept their word. So, we are officially part of the galactic community now. How do you feel about that? Fom. Cautious, Eric admitted. They fear us, and fear can make people do stupid things. But at least they are not dismissing us as primitives anymore. No, Lisa agreed. They learned that lesson the hard way. This is not conquest. This is justice. Your empire will survive on one condition. You will never threaten humanity again. Any Zephon ship that enters human space will be destroyed. Any Zephon world that supports action against humanity will be blockaded. And to ensure you remember this lesson, a human fleet will remain here, in orbit around your homeworld, forever. The Zephon Military Command tried to respond. Their defense fleet launched from orbital platforms. But they were outnumbered 5-1. And the humans had learned their tactics too well. The battle was one-sided and brutal. NG, time with their lives. The entire industrial capacity of humanity focused on one goal. Build faster than light drives. Build them fast. Build them in numbers. Factories that had made cars now made drive components. Mines worked triple shifts to extract rare materials. Scientists who had competed with each other now shared everything freely. The entire species moved as one toward a single purpose. Commander Zroth watched from orbit as human resistance somehow intensified despite months of warfare. It made no sense. They should be broken by now. Their cities were ruins. Their casualties were terrible. Yet they fought harder than ever. What Zroth did not know was that every day of fighting was one day closer to the moment when humanity would stop being the prey and become the hunter. Aids on landing sites. They even managed to capture Zephon equipment and reverse engineer some of the simpler technology. In his command center, Jake Patterson studied every battle, every engagement. He knew humanity was losing. But he also knew something important. Every day the humans held out was another day for scientists to study Zephon technology. Every captured weapon was another clue to how their enemies' systems worked. We are buying time, Jake told his exhausted staff. Time for our people to learn. Time to find a weakness. Time to survive. And in laboratories hidden deep underground, human scientists worked day and night, studying fragments of Zephon technology, trying to understand how beings could travel faster than light, how their shields worked, how their weapons generated so much power from such small devices. The war continued, and humanity refused to surrender. But deep in his hearts, Threx felt a cold certainty. The predecessors had never been wrong before. Their technology proved they understood reality in ways others did not. If they had seen the future and felt compelled to leave a warning, then that warning was real. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a distant world circling a yellow star, a species called humanity was growing, learning, advancing. One day, they would reach the stars, and when that day came, the galaxy would remember this moment. Threx just hoped they would remember it with gratitude and not regret.